All right, we are live again, back with on the Wolf Sports, the golf show, greens in regulation, right? With Green Means Go betting. Happy to have him back again this week, previewing the TPC, or I should say, the Valero Open at TPC San Antonio. What a weekend to be have. They have the Valero Open and the Final Four, both in San Antonio this weekend. So big sports weekend down by the Alamo. Green, how are you doing? How are you doing today? What are you excited about with this Valero Open? And always kind of like the precursor to the Masters, right? The lead up, but sometimes there's some bigger names that might leak into the field. I guess we'll get into that a little bit more later. But yeah, what's going on, man?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm enjoying baseball being back. I was not a baseball kid growing up, believe it or not. Was one of my least enjoyed sports, both from a playing and watching perspective. But once the pitch clock rule came into play, I really locked into baseball. So I've enjoyed that being a regular daily occurrence. And yeah, I'm excited for this Valero Open, even though I have some offers specifically on the DFS side of things that are already giving me um, lineups to target for the Masters. So it's like a lot of people have put this already in the back of their minds and they've skipped this week because of obviously what the Masters does in terms of bringing the community together. So a slept on event here a little bit, and a weird event in terms of characters, if you want to call them that, golfers, because you have guys who play last week, skip this week to get ready for the Masters, and then the guys who didn't play this previous week will try to play this week to get ready for the Masters. So, kind of a night and day in terms of personnel from what we saw in Houston, and then what we're going to see in San Antonio.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, sometimes that we've seen, like I was saying, you'll see guys that might use this as a little bit of a tune-up before the Masters, but yeah, a lot of guys just sit it out and just decide, hey, this is a little bit of a bye week to try to get their mind right as they head down to Augusta. So yeah, let's get into it first. I guess you can share a little bit of info if we get this pulled up. Tell us a little bit about the course and what we can expect here.
Yeah, long course compared to the traditional PGA course. A couple of par fives over 600 yards. I believe it is one of the biggest grossing yardages in par threes, 7,438 total yards, par 72. Not terribly dangerous in the roughs. I know, again, to start this year, a lot of danger if you get into the rough areas with thick rough. This rough, they have only measured it 2-ish inches. So shouldn't be too much of a danger there in terms of sort of course setup. Not too many water hazards. I believe there's maybe 2 holes where there's water, so not a lot of worry in that respect. Whereas last week we saw Minwoo Lee find some water. I don't know if you were watching, but had a 5-stroke lead for most of the day on Sunday. Got down to a like minus, not minus 2,000, minus like 20,000. Like he was going to win the event, and then on 16 or 17, he hits his drive in the water on the par five where everybody had been scoring all day long. So he took a provisional, didn't even drop anywhere. So he had to re-tee for 3 from the tee. So none of that this week. But the one thing I will mention, and maybe we can do it for the next slide, is as we talk more about the course, you can go ahead and, I guess, am I in control? Who's in control?
Yeah, I think
I,
you're
I
running
can
that.
do it.
Yeah, you got the controls.
Why
Yeah,
am I yelling at you?
yeah.
Okay. Um, the most important aspect would be the approaches. There are some tough approach shots. These greens can be difficult to get to in the second shot with where they can put the pins and how some of these greens are set up. So I was looking at the statistics and it was almost honestly laughable. This course mirrors almost identically the course average on the tour. So last week, I said, Houston Open, putting, 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 scrambling, scrambling, scrambling. What's your short game? That's going to decide it. And this week, I can't lead you to anything to look for. The most important statistic, which ranks 24th out of 52nd. So middle of the pack is strokes gained around the green. The least important, ranking almost dead last in PGA courses. The most insignificant statistic is driving accuracy. So if you're worried about guys who can get a little bit sprayy, are we getting that as a word? Can we use that? Sprayy off the tee? Uh, they're in play this week because there's really no danger there. Distance matters more than accuracy on 9 out of the 14 holes that are par fours and par fives. Accuracy matters more on 5 of them. So just some anecdotal notes, not really statistical, but things to keep in mind. Tough approach shots will, I think, make the difference in this week. I think the Colin Morikawa's, and he's not in the field. So unfortunately, we can't capitalize there. But guys who are solid off the tee and can really put in some good second shots, those are the guys you want to look at. Wind, it's windy in the Midwest. I haven't looked at the weather report for Texas. I can only imagine that it's going to be pretty windy there as well. Something to keep your eye on. And then conditions are typically pretty firm out there. Again, haven't checked the weather reports, but those are some things to keep in mind.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, and that's another thing that's always, difficult to, I guess, for lack of a better term, forecast anyway, is the weather impact, and as we've seen, especially early, this time of year in April, things can kinda get dicey. I know we've seen a couple of years, even recently, with Augusta where things get a little, hairy, from a weather standpoint, but yeah, I guess sometimes that can level out the field. Sometimes it becomes more where you got to kind of be up to speed on who's teeing off when, because some guys might be able to get into the clubhouse before things get tricky and put up a nice low score, and then the guys later in the afternoon have to kind of deal with the slop. So yeah,
Yeah,
just as you were saying, kind of something that certainly to something to pay attention to and factor in when you're putting your card together. So, yeah, now that you've talked about some of these stats and which stats matter, right? Or you can get into that a little bit, or and then kind
yeah,
of go into uh, who fits that mold for those stats.
sure. Yeah. And as it relates to weather, I know there are a lot of people who factor that in. I could do a better job of that. I am used to, like I said, in the
It's
Midwest,
hard.
of one day being 60, the next day to being 40. Weather changes so much. Oh, we're getting 4 inches of snow. We look outside, it's 40 degrees and there's sunshine. So I think a live betting perspective is more useful there when you see guys go out and maybe the first wave is shooting even par, but 20-mile-an-hour winds are gonna pick up in the afternoon. Maybe that's something you can look at for the afternoon guys if books are offering score lines or bogeys or things like that. So I try to look at weather advantages or disadvantages live, and would advise you to do the same. So who fits the mold? These are a list of guys who, when you look at the course, should fare well in terms of what it requires. Now, I laugh because last week I did not discuss these categories. I did not really discuss who fits the mold. And I was kind of looking back at yesterday or at last week's performance, and I looked at who fits the mold for the Houston Open in that course. And wouldn't you know, Minwoo Lee was fourth. And had I just had that up there, I think that would have been a fantastic bit of information because the winner was sitting right there in that fourth spot. So, does that tell you anything about Brent Snedeker? Probably not. I don't think Brent Snedeker is going to win this, but there are some names on here that I do not mind. Akshay Bhatia won it last year. He has played well here a couple times. Denny McCarthy on here. uh, if you look at the scoreboard from last year, are you aware of what the winner shot last year at this course off the top of your head? Don't look it up. Don't cheat.
No, I feel like it was low, like pretty crazy low.
Yeah. So Akshay and Denny went to a playoff, both 20 under.
Yeah,
The
yeah, that's
next
right, that's right.
the next guy was like minus 11. So just an insane. I mean, it's not very often, if ever, you see that wide of a margin between two guys and then the third guy. So, um, you know, outside of those two previous winners, I know Jake Knapp is kind of making a name for himself lately. His smooth, buttery swing, as people seem to comment on. But you can see there's a lot of kind of mid-level guys. You don't see some of the big names on this, and that's because a lot of the big guys are getting ready to go to Augusta. So won't talk too much about people I like on the who fits the mold. Just wanted to provide you with some perspective there. We can talk course history in terms of players who have played there and have gained at least a stroke to the field um, in their time at TPC San Antonio. And I've listed the rounds they've played beside them. So Spieth is actually the best player with a minimum of 8 rounds in strokes gained at this course. Now, his form is bad, maybe one of the worst of his career. Injuries, maybe to blame. I don't know what else is to blame. There's a lot of things you can blame when golf is involved. But Jordan Spieth, as far as a fit and history here, is number one. And then again, you can kind of look through this and see Denny McCarthy makes the list again. He's gained strokes here in 8 rounds, but not a ton. I mean, last week we had guys with 14 rounds, quite a few with 14 rounds. Most here, Corey Connors is 12. So Ricky Fowler, you see another guy who at one time was a name that we would certainly bring up, but not so much anymore. But he's kind of been hanging around, hanging out in on leaderboards. So we'll see if he can bring it together in San Antonio.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, and I mean, look, there's, I mean, Spieth probably the biggest name on this list, anyways, but still a lot of mid-priced guys that aren't going to blow you away, but not bad players here either, right? So maybe guys that as we kind of get later into the when we start looking at DFS guys, these are always the guys that you're looking to kind of fill out the middle portions, especially next week. But these are always
Yeah.
the guys that you're kind of looking to fill out the middle, the meat and potatoes of your lineups. So yeah, what I guess now moving forward, tell us a little bit about what the model says.
Yeah. So I tried to present this in a more conducive way and a more organized way. So again, apologies for last week's efforts or lack thereof. I ran 10 trials with the model and I kind of tried to focus on different things. I've put those different things in italics at the top here. Trial run, just simply a first run. Just, okay, I kind of understand the course, approach matters, distance matters. I just kind of did a collective, a grab bag, if you will. And Frankie Capan came out one. I'm not saying he's not going to win, but I'm also going to tell you I've never heard of him. Um, Vince Whaley, a guy you don't typically hear about. Quade Cummins. So when you look at trial one, what you see is probably something you should ignore, if I'm being honest. And sometimes that happens when you put a lot of funky things in. So on trial two, we looked more at recent form, focused heavily on last 24 rounds. And you see Corey Connors on there. He has been playing well. Ludwig is the favorite to win, according to the odds. Fleetwood also up there. Celinda's an interesting name. He's been playing well, yes. And I think he fits this course pretty well, which we'll talk about. Other guys who've been playing well, Keegan Bradley, and I'm surprised. I can look what round or what course Spieth kind of came out of his shell a little bit. I'm shocked to see him at 15th, but let me look here. I can find what, because I know there was a week where he played pretty well. It's also in Dallas. Sometimes people like to play in their home state, so maybe there's a chance that Spieth plays well here in Texas at the Valspar. So that'd been 2 weeks ago. He gained 4 strokes tee to green, gained stroke putting, gained 7.6 strokes on approach, which may be his most ever. He got 28th. Didn't play well off the tee, but again, here it doesn't matter off the tee. So had been playing pretty well off the tee prior. So Spieth, maybe I'm being a little too harsh on him. Course history, Ludwig on here again. Hideki, we see now for the second time. Corey Connors. Then I ran a trial courses that are similar to this in terms of longer, harder to get at the greens, firmer, faster greens. And then I found a Sports Illustrated article that broke down the uh, key stats. It's always good to have perspective. I don't know if Sports Illustrated is sharp. I'm not here to judge them on that, but they provided some perspectives that I hadn't thought about. So if we throw it in for a tenth of our model, we can do that. Again, Hideki pops up, Corey Connors pops up. You see Corey Connors a lot. In fact, you see him 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the 5 times. Um, Trial 6, I called my feel good model. There's no other reason besides I felt really good when I was putting in the inputs, when I was putting in the weights in terms of the statistics that I felt would matter. And Ben Griffin came out first. So if you want to go with a gut play of the week, maybe like Ben Griffin outright. I guess if I'm going to trust the model, maybe I should as well. Trial 7, I focused on 4 stats. I put 25% weight on, let's see if I wrote it down here. It would have been wise. Par 4 scoring, weighted strokes gained off the tee, weighted strokes gained approach, and long courses. So just kind of a holistic view. And look who's first. Corey Connors pops up first. You see Akshay on there, who has won previously, as we mentioned. Trial 8 was very detailed, honestly, too detailed. I'm still trying to work on this model a little bit in terms of how I input, because, if you think of it like a recipe, the ingredients you put in determine the outcome of your product. So the model is the model. It has all the data, it has all the statistics. It's going to do what I tell it, and I need to make sure I'm telling it things. So I mean, this model was like 10 and 12 different uh, statistics. So all the weights were like sub 10%. So I'm still trying to figure out if that's more effective or less effective than like trial 7, where it was heavily, you know, smaller amount of stats, but heavier weights. And then trial 10, sort of similar. And what do you know? Corey Connors comes up. Is he on every list? No, he's on 4 out of the 5 again. So, I don't know if you want to look at this. I guess there's a couple ways to look at this. If you're someone who wants to make a decision off of these, you can look for repetition, who shows up a lot. You can look for who shows up higher up, because the higher up they are, the better they are. You can look at a combination of both. We'll talk about that. Do you give a guy in Ludwig more weight because he's first, as opposed to Corey Connors, who's maybe not first, actually at the bottom here, but he's on here more than Ludwig, that type of thing. Or maybe you value certain model weights more than others. Maybe you're big into recent form and you care more about that. So I am just here to provide you with the menu. You have to decide what to order.
Yeah, and you mentioned recent form. I mean, I don't, this season I'm sure he's kind of picked up where he left off, but Ludwig really kind of busted onto the scene last year as a younger guy that has just a really, I think, a really fun game to watch. A great swing, just a guy that's going to continue to be in the mix. Um, but yeah, just I believe he's the favorite. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he's the
Yeah.
favorite this
Yeah.
weekend. So
Him and Fleetwood are, I believe, the best
man,
in terms of odds, or the worst in terms of odds. But
we
yeah.
So I wanted to give a quick shout to some guys that are checking us out. Our guy Jay, he thinks Tommy Fleetwood or Woodland. So far from what he's seen, that's what he likes is Tommy Fleetwood or Gary Woodland. So yeah, shout out to
I like
Jay there.
50%. I like 50% of that, Jay.
Yeah,
I'll let you decide.
Tyler G thinks Scheffler is going to win, which I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he's not. Not that this this isn't the but I am happy to book that action for you, Tyler, if you'd like.
I'll give you any
Uh,
odds you want, Tyler.
yeah, he is asking who should I bet? So we will get to that. So no worries there. So yeah, moving forward, just wanted to give some shouts. Look, feel free to keep firing in more questions, more thoughts.
Yeah,
Um,
send I love the comments. I love the interaction.
yeah.
Not that Zach's not interesting, but it I want to be here for a community. I want people to engage. I'm happy to answer further questions. I I taught high school, and I was constantly interrupted and constantly asked questions. And I think I sometimes work better in that setup. So please ask the questions on the YouTube or the. Can they ask on X?
Yeah,
How
yeah,
does that
that's
work?
where Jay chimed in. My
Okay,
guy
yeah.
Jay.
TikTok, if anybody's watching there. But yeah, Ludwig, he's won this year. Torrey Pines Genesis Invitational gained strokes in every single category. Uh, he was cut at the Players, but that's a night and day course to hear. And he was top 20 or 22nd at Bay Hill for the Arnold Palmer. So, yeah, I think, of course, he could win. I think, obviously, the favorite. I just don't love the price, but we'll talk about selections whenever you're ready.
Yeah, yeah, let's get into it. Yeah, as a
Oh,
Eagles guy, 43,
yeah.
he was asking if there's any arbitrage hedging situations, which that's something you'd probably. I mean, I could be. Tell me if I'm wrong. That's something you're going to want to look for midway through the tournament. You know, if you maybe are sitting in a position with a guy on an outright that you really like, that's when you kind of want to be looking for those, not so much before the tournament starts. You're not going to have as much advantage there. But yeah, go ahead and
Yeah.
school us here, Green.
Right. Uh, I will say that at one point in time, you could find some arbitrage with specifically head to heads.
Yeah,
But
it's
anymore,
not really worth it.
these books are so aligned that there's no opportunities. And there's not a ton of two-way markets in golf. There's sometimes round score, but those aren't usually posted till the morning, and they're pretty juiced, like minus 150, minus 110. So it's hard to find any opportunities. Okay. So what I have done for you is I've gone ahead and created another possibly helpful. Like, let's just assume that the model is great. Let's assume I inputted all the weights that were necessary. Let's assume I've done my job. Then this is statistically, if the golfers play to their strengths, play to their averages, this is where we want to look. You'll see the name, you'll see the points, and you'll see the odds. So name, obvious. Points, what points are is if we go back to the model, if they were in first, so Ben Griffin here, he gets 15 points for being in first. Ryan Gerard gets 14, all the way down to Doug Gim, who's in the 15th spot. He gets 1. So just think of it inverse of the position that they fall. So it's weighted a little bit. So Hideki's total sum of placement across all of his appearances is 92. So Hideki, according to the model, according to all things that I've input, is the winner of the San Antonio. Now, what's Hideki's number one problem? Do you know, Zach? Do you have a guess?
Um, I mean,
Or
this.
what am I gonna say is his problem?
What are we looking at here? I mean, I would say from time to time, like his I don't know that he has one. I mean, I don't it's hard for me to, like, identify a problem with him because when he's locked in I mean, the only problem that I've seen from him is when he is dealing with an injury, and like
Yeah.
sometimes he gets a little he can spray it around a little bit whenever he's dealing with those injuries. But I don't know, when he's dialed in, I feel like he's pretty accurate. Maybe not as much length off the tee, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong there.
No, you're right. I agree, and the problem, you honestly made it more complex. I think his form recently it's just been a little loose. He hasn't been as sharp. I don't know if it's his back, which he kind of came into the season with. People were wondering, but Hideki is one of my favorite golfers to watch. And maybe that's because he won me my biggest outright ever last year, an 80-1 ticket. That's probably why. But this year, the last three events, he's lost strokes and approach, which is troublesome here in what we've said. But he makes up for it in other categories, evidently, and he finds himself in the top spot. So that's that. Ludwig, you see, second. Fleetwood, McNeely, Corey Connors. Um, and then I've listed the odds. These were the best odds that I could find at the books I had available. You should always line shop and double check and make sure you're getting a good price. Since these numbers are so big, if you look at Keith Mitchell here, a 45-1, if you find a 42-1 in the grand scheme of things, you're not going to be too out of sorts. So obviously try to find the best price, but we're not dealing with numbers here that I'm going to get bent out of shape about. And then over here, kind of repeated the chart, and then I've made a Minesweeper-esque looking situation of picks that I am personally playing. I've already played these. They're already bet. Um, I didn't bet any top fives. I bet Jordan Spieth top 10, and I bet a handful of top 20s and some outrights. As far as units go, obviously player outrights small. If you want to put a unit, half a unit on top 10, top 20, do that. But there are some longer shots in here. So yeah, I mean, this would be a good time if anybody has comments to add, questions to ask. If you have anything to mention, Zach, chime in. I guess I should mention the dead heat thing.
Yeah, which is different book by book. So yeah,
Yeah,
it is something that's important because I in some instances, because I believe like MGM is one that normally doesn't um, split. At least in my experience in the past, they've been one that they won't do the dead heat payout. So there have been plenty of times that I actually will, if I'm looking at a top 20, I will take maybe a slightly, well, it is a worse price at
yeah,
MGM, but I'm okay with that because some of the juice I'm giving up is way worth it when you consider what you end up getting paid out on the dead heat. So
yeah.
that's just something book by book to pay attention to and make sure you know what their rules are on those.
Yeah. The first time you lose money winning a bet because of a dead heat will be the last time that you typically bet into a dead heat market. I remember the first time I bet, whatever it was, $20 and then I got paid out 12 and I'm like I lost $8 because I won. Um, so yes, it's an annoying lesson to learn. So I will tell you, FanDuel and DraftKings, MGM, as Zach said, are books that I would suggest betting to avoid the confusion. They pay out including ties. So if for these top 20s, if there is a tie for 17, let's say 17 to 27. So there's 10 guys that encompass that top 20 because technically there's the 20th guy is in that mix. They're going to split up your bet between all of the people tied in that 20 range, roughly. There's articles out there that you can read and fully understand. But the point is, you're going to be surprised when you get paid significantly less depending on the amount of people that tied. So, especially like Denny McCarthy on here, he's 150 on ESPN, which pays out based on dead heat, and he's 110 on FanDuel. Take the 110. Don't even get into the mess of that. So that's my suggestion. I think there are, if anybody is watching this that is very skilled in the plus EV and can give me the implied probability that there is a tie, then how much the tie is going to be worth and how much the dead heat's going to be paying out as that relates to the price increase from these books. If anybody can do that math and let me know if it's more EV to bet the dead heat price at 260 on Jordan Spieth top 10 or the FanDuel price at 170, my DMs are open. Please let me know. But I do not have that knowledge right now. So I would just advise avoiding the dead heat markets, even though I've given you those numbers. So I realize that's counterintuitive, but
Yeah, and I
it,
think we'll probably get a lot more into that next week when there's much more guys that can make the cut because that's just another, you know, part that has to be factored in when you're evaluating the dead heat or, you know, many other things is how many people, what percentage of the field actually can make the cut.
yeah,
Because, you know, obviously if you're limiting that down, you are not as much, you're not exposed as much to the dead heat. But yeah, no, like you said, I was very frustrating learning, you know, the first time when I did learn the hard way about what the dead heat was, where it's like, wait, how's this, what's going on here? But yeah.
yeah,
Uh, but anyway, yeah, that's why I said it. I almost like to try to avoid it altogether if I can, even if it means giving up a little bit of juice. It's definitely worth it. So, yeah, you know. So who ultimately do you like here? Like you know, I don't know if you have one that's stronger than others, or I know who you have. The boxes checked here, as you called it, your minesweeper betting card, but.
yeah. Yeah. Hideki, I love on a personal level. On a recent form level, it makes me nervous. I would have loved. I think he was actually 22 to 1 when I looked last, so you get a little bit of a bump. I would have loved. I would have loved this at 30, 35. You give me that, I have no questions. I'm a little nervous at that price. McNeely, he keeps popping up on this dumb model, and it's kind of frustrating because he hasn't done a ton. Um, so I'm betting it because the price I think is good, but do something, Maverick, please. Corey Connors, I'm taking. I think it's strong. He's been hanging around. Let me look. Let me see what his numbers are recently. I do believe he's had some really strong performances this season. And I think he's a guy who typically brings it. He's had an eighth, a sixth, and a third his last 3 weeks, gaining strokes in every category. He popped up 9 times. So if you can find a way to get Corey Connors 16 to 1, I think all the stars are aligning. And I would even, I wouldn't mind a top 10 if you can find one at plus money there. Keegan Bradley, sometimes I just love a good dad. Just Keegan Bradley just looks like a guy who is going to make a nice bonfire, bring out the marshmallows. I don't know. There's something that just feels like home about Keegan Bradley. I know this is not the analysis that you probably expected to get, but no, I think Bradley's played well. Berger, I've been on him a couple times this year. His approach play has been okay, but
Seems like
35
he
to 1.
fell off a little bit. I mean, a couple years ago, he was really looking like a guy that was rising up the ranks.
Yeah.
Um,
He
and
took
I,
he took some years off or took a year off.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I
Um,
guess he's kind of battling his way back into the mix here. But um, yeah, I really liked his game for a while. And then, like you said,
I
after he
mean,
took that time off,
he's got a second, a 12th, 25th, 15th, and 20th. So, I mean, he's playing. He's gaining strokes in nearly every event this year. He has gained strokes in every category except off the tee at TPC. But fairways are narrow and rough is bad. So yeah. So he makes it. Gary Woodland played really well last week. In fact, found himself on the driving range as Minwoo Lee and Scotty Scheffler were finishing up because there was a chance of a playoff. And at 50 to 1, I'm a little shocked with how overall weak this field is and how well he's been playing. I expected to see his number closer to the 35-40 range, even maybe Keegan Bradley's 25 to 1. So I think 50 to 1 is a really good price on Gary Woodland. McCarthy's my favorite pick. If you say you have to pick one play, I think I go McCarthy. I think his putting, I think his approach play. He had last week off. I don't know the data on is it better when they have a week off? Is it better when they play back to back? I bet you have data that says both can be good and bad. Um, but I think there's something about shooting 20 under and getting second and knowing third was 9 strokes back that makes you ready for the week. So he's my number one favorite. And then Tom Kim at 45-1. He's got all the tools. He's a Texas guy. So I'm not afraid to put quarter of unit on Tom Kim. I think he's kind of hanging around too and could break out. And I think now's a good time. 5 of the last 10 winners of this event have been first time winners too. So it's one that is kind of open to anybody who shows up.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
What about
Great.
you? You look at this, you have any good feelings?
I mean, I don't know. To be honest, I'll probably end up riding with some of the things that you like. I always end up, I think, liking Finau maybe more than the numbers suggest. He's just a guy that,
Did you
you
see
know,
his mishap on 15th on Saturday?
yeah, and I think that's the problem with him is that there seems to be those mixed in too frequently. That if he could avoid, then I think we would probably he's a guy that could, I mean, look, he used to be called top 10 Tony, forever, right? So, one guy that
What I
sticks out
respect about
yeah,
him is
go
he
ahead.
doesn't seem to care. It's like a bizarre, like,
Yeah.
he's gonna swing at a putt, leaning across, half effort, and he's gonna,
Oh, yeah,
miss.
that
And
he missed, like, the one-inch putt or yeah,
yeah,
that's
and he
happened,
just
yeah.
he kinda looks at it like, "How'd that
Yeah.
happen?" Even though he knows full well how it happened, he taps in and picks it up and just walks off,
Yeah, he
like,
treated it like you'd see, us playing in a on a muni course, right? Where it's
mm,
like, "Oh, hey," looking around like, "Did anybody else see that?" Or, "Am I good here?" or
yeah.
what,
Oh, it was a gimme. He should have picked it up. Yeah, yeah, I gave it to you. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh
yeah, I just look at his year and, it's tough, Zach. It's tough to find a way. In 2025, 3 cuts, a lot of red and strokes gained. But hey, it's a it's a it's a course he can spray it on, and as long as he hits those mid irons, then anybody can win. But yeah, maybe a top 10 is a better than an outright for Finau if you can get a good price there.
Another guy that I was curious about is, Patrick Cantlay, who's another guy that at the top of his game, I mean, this guy is, clearly one of the better golfers in the world and, has but, what's going on with him? What
My
where
thought, uh, you know, I I hate to make conjectures about people's lives and professionals, and he's always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Is Patrick Cantlay? I mean, 12th, 31st, 5th, 33rd, 5th, 15th, 11th, um, 17th, 13th. If we go into last year, 12th, 25th, 5th, 3rd. I mean, he has results, but it's something that Sunday shows up and he's got the yips. Um, and and for that reason, I find myself never getting to Patrick Cantlay because I have not. I've seen him in position to win many times, and I've seen him lose many times uh, after he's been in position. So, yeah, I don't know if it's mental. Um, he. I mean, I don't know the full story about his caddy. Didn't someone pass away? And do you know that story?
I'm not particularly familiar with it, but yeah, I do remember that being kinda mentioned. I mean, I was gonna say, I think that year he won the FedEx Cup, it was just in similar fashion where he just never had a bad tournament
Yeah,
and was just always kind of near the top, always in the mix,
yeah,
and kind of got himself into a great, position for the FedEx Cup and ended up winning just kind of based on that consistency.
yeah. He's just a guy that I sometimes watch and I'm like, does he wanna be there? I kinda prefer, like, there's the DeChambeaus and the Rorys. not maybe not so much Rory, but the DeChambeaus who emote too much and are too, and I'm just like, dude, you want to be there too much, you know. And then there's the Patrick Cantlays that I'm like, I ca- w- like I know that it's your job, and maybe I'm not the most expressive at my job, but like he doesn't seem to have much in terms of connection to the game. I don't know. So again, I don't want to be critical of the guy, but there's just something missing for him for me. So at 18 to 1, yeah, he statistically should be set up pretty well, but again, I can't take him outright.
Yeah, and again, I mean, one of the obviously he's got the game. He's incredibly consistent player. I just never end up getting, and as we'll get into some DFS looks as well. He's a guy I just never end up working into my DFS card because for whatever reason he's just he's missing something there. He doesn't, and it's not from lack of production, but he's always going to be on the higher end price wise, or maybe just under some of those top tier names. When you have more of a fully loaded field, but yeah, I maybe it's just that he doesn't get as many outrights as perhaps he should, but
Yeah, and he's typically priced pretty high. I mean,
yeah.
his name brings a lot of recognition, so his salary is usually a lot. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Should we?
so I guess moving forward into this, if you wanted to get into any maybe DFS looks that you liked, some lineups that maybe you've thrown together, or you know, um, as kind of our last little look here.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll do a couple more in definitely for the Masters because I think DFS will give out some promotions. They already did. I had to deposit $10 and I got a $10 free lineup. So I mean that's a no brainer if you're someone who plays even on the sports book or DFS. You get a free lineup. You're probably going to play your $10 anyway. So look for promotions as the Masters approaches. I'll have some more DFS stuff for that. But as far as this week goes, the model gives us these three. These were all based on slightly different weights within the model, but some consistent low price guys. If you want to sort of, I think you kind of have to build around that. Would be Ben Griffin and Danny Walker. Which, if we go back, Danny Walker, Danny Walker, where'd you go? Did I not have him on here? I think I cut him. Ben Griffin though, top 20. Yeah. Yeah. Ben Griffin, top 20. So, that's a decent way to think about this. If you kind of want to piece these two together, is a lot of the top 20 guys I took because they are not really in a good position to win, but I think they can play well. So, longer odds, if you will. So, those guys could be priced pretty cheap on DFS and would be good lineup completers. So, Ludwig, according to the model, the price is steep, but it should be worth it. Hideki, I mean, this one has a kind of a double stack of two big dogs, Ludwig and Hideki, and then Ben Griffin, Gerard, Castillo, and Danny Walker. This one gets Ludwig again, Keith Mitchell, Maverick McNeely, who I did take outright, unfortunately. And then this one, Hideki, Tom Kim, McNeely, Ben Griffin, Rico Hoey, Andrew Novak. The bottom one's probably my favorite. Um, Yeah, yeah, the bottom one's probably my favorite, even though that middle one is projecting 512 points if they all play to their expectation, which is crazy. But I think Suber, Walker are both missed cut risks more so. And so if you lose two guys at the cut, you're probably not placing. But you're more the DFS guy. You can share some of your strategies. I'm greedy when it comes to DFS. I like the GPPs. I'm never going to win, but I like playing low stakes, $10 to try to win a few grand. I like the dream. I like to chase the dream.
yeah, and I don't know, I go about it a little bit differently where I like to look at I mean, number one, you got to get guys to make the cut because if you don't get all your whole team across the cut line, chances are, regardless of whatever competition you're in, you're probably not going to end up in the cash at all. So, whether you're doing a 50-50 double up a tournament, a big, one of the big crazy tournaments. But which again, that's as I said last week, that's something that I like to diversify a little bit into those. Obviously be smart about how much you're putting into each one. I tend to I throw a little bit in the big crazy mega tournaments, just to kind of throw a little hat in the race. But I would not go crazy on those. I put a lot more into kind of uh, moderate gains with these, but put yourself into position where if all the stars align, that you could end up doing pretty well. But yeah, anyway, guys that are consistent, guys that are going to make the cut, and then trying to. I don't worry as much about the projected ownership other than,
I don't
or at
either.
least I should say I don't look. Yeah, I don't look for it. I just kind of in my head, I think about, uh, is this guy likely to be used a lot? Like, I mean, like for next week, I'll tell you every single year in the Masters, Patrick Reed is in my DFS lineups because I know it's like people hate him, so it kind of deters
Yeah.
casual people from using him. But the guy just performs year after year at Augusta, and he's just like an automatic throw in into my lineup. So I think about it more that way. I know it's not the most data driven approach, but when
No,
it
I
comes to DFS,
I think
that's one way that I do like to think about this. And then I look at, kind of comparing different odds and guys who, if I like them, depending on their prices for top 20s, they might work their way into my lineup. And it's like, hey, if I can get, and I know it's not the end all be all, but, and again, this isn't heavy hitting analytics, um, you know, uh, information here, analytically driven information here, but I do the books aren't going to lose on a lot of this stuff. They are pretty dialed in when it comes to these odds. And I like to use that information to my advantage. So, as many guys higher up the board on a top 20s, on top 10s as I can get into my lineup, that's kind of where I like to go. Yeah,
I'm
sure.
gonna
You
try to
might get,
build I'm gonna try to build a lineup with my top 20, see if it's affordable. You
yeah.
keep
Yeah. And that's kind of what I try to do is like, hey, figure out who I like from the top 20 perspective and then kind of build my lineup based on that. Because ultimately, if you get some guys that are jammed into those top 20s, you're going to end up making some money one way or another across the different types of competitions that you're entering. So, as many as you can get that fit within that price range, you're going to put yourself in pretty good position. I do like to, and again, it kind of depends on if it's a loaded field. So next week, this conversation is going to be a little bit different. Um, but where you can just kind of load up on all sorts of big names because the prices are adjusted. But on here, like a guy I end up liking to use pretty often. He's not here on this list, but like Siwoo Kim is just another guy that I like to use often, just because he is a consistent guy. I feel like there's a high floor. So I look for high floor, maybe at the risk of not quite as high of a ceiling, because I will spend my bigger money on the high ceiling guys. So, all right, throw money at guys who, hey, can this guy win? The rest of the money kind of spread around on, hey, I know that this guy won't be an anchor unless, and kind of drag my whole lineup down unless he just completely has a meltdown.
right. Yeah, definitely agree there. Siwoo Kim, also a Texas guy, so maybe you're onto something this week. I submitted this lineup. Okay, I was moved to submit this lineup while on here. Um, Ben Griffin, who's on the top 20, Tom Kim, who's on the top 20, Denny McCarthy, who's on the top 20, Keith Mitchell, who's on the top 20, Isaiah Salinda, who's on the top 20, and then we had some wiggle room in terms of the money left. So I went with Gary Woodland, who I have to win and who I think is a good price to win. So um, we'll try it. We'll try the top 20 strat, and we'll report back next week and see how it does. But I think getting 6 across the cut line is the key. It's a nice breath you can exhale on Saturday when you know that they've all made it, because you're pretty much, for the most part, going to win some money.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, but yeah, no, I think that's probably going to do it for this edition. Obviously, check it out next week when I think we'll probably go a little
When it
bit more.
matters.
Yeah, 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 yeah. When we dive in a little bit more in depth, have a lot more excitement, some bigger names, some more recognizable guys. So definitely looking forward to that. Anything else that you wanted to plug here, Green, before we wrap?
Um,
Check out
I
his
got
YouTube
nothing.
channel if you're not
Yeah,
already watching there.
yeah. I'm just here to help. I'm here to educate where I can. Eventually, I'll be here to entertain. I still get a little, it's weird being in front of strangers sometimes. I just, I got to work into that. Not that you're a stranger, Zach, but I'm just being honest. So I'm excited to talk about MLB. Hopefully, we can get some MLB streams and
Yeah,
conversations going. So I'm excited for warm weather. I'm excited to be out for golf. I'm just excited. So
yeah,
uh,
yeah. It's a great time of
those are my
year.
plugs.
Yeah, no, for sure. Definitely a great time of year. But yeah, that will do it. Thanks again, everybody who tuned in, chimed in the comments and the questions. Good luck. Hopefully, you get some tickets to the window this Sunday, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.